This isn't a ghost story. At least, I don't think it is. Maybe it's just a story about the things we don't see, the cracks in reality we ignore, the casual cruelty that can unravel a life. It's about a bus, a late-night route, and a passenger who simply vanished. Vanished in a way that leaves you questioning everything you thought you knew about the ordinary. And believe me, there's nothing ordinary about what happened on the 314. The 314. It ran from the city center out to the smaller, satellite towns, the places where the streetlights hummed a little too loudly and the silence at night felt heavy, suffocating. Places where people often felt forgotten. That particular night, it was driven by a man named Frank. Frank wasn't always just a bus driver. He had dreams, once. Big, sprawling dreams of being an architect. He'd been good at drawing, gifted even. Won a few local competitions in his youth. But life, as it often does, had a way of grinding down aspirations. His father got sick, needed constant care. Frank was the eldest, the responsible one. The architecture degree became a community college certificate in mechanics, a more practical trade to earn a living. The blueprints were replaced with engine schematics. He met Martha at the diner where she worked as a waitress. She was bright, bubbly, full of life. Everything Frank wasn't at that point. She saw something in him, a flicker of the old spark, perhaps. They married young, fueled by hope and a shared desire for something better. Children followed quickly. 2 daughters, Sarah and Emily. The dreams of architecture faded further, replaced by the more immediate concerns of diapers and daycare. The mechanic job paid the bills, but it wasn't enough. The hours were long, the work was hard, and the money was tight. He needed something more stable, something with benefits. That's when he saw the ad for bus drivers. City job, good benefits, a pension. Not glamorous, not exciting, but it was secure. He applied, got the job, and started driving the 314. At first, he hated it. The monotony, the unpredictable passengers, the constant stop and start. But he got used to it. He learned the route, learned the rhythms of the city. He found a strange sort of peace in the repetition. He became a fixture on the 314, a familiar face to the regulars. He knew their names, their stories. He was more than just a driver, he was a part of their lives. He wasn't unhappy, not really. He loved Martha, loved his daughters. He had a comfortable home, a steady job. He had traded his dreams for stability, and he had no regrets. Or so he told himself. But sometimes, late at night, when the bus was empty and the city was quiet, he would look out the window and wonder what might have been. He would imagine himself designing buildings, creating beautiful spaces, leaving his mark on the world. But those thoughts were fleeting, quickly dismissed. He was a bus driver now. That was his reality. He found small joys in the routine. The sunrise over the industrial park, the laughter of children on their way to school, the friendly wave from Mrs. Henderson who always waited at the corner of Oak Street. These little moments, these glimpses of humanity, made the job bearable. Frank considered Mrs. Henderson to be his bus stop buddy. Each day she waited near the bus stop, with a bright smile on her face. Frank would always wave at her before getting ready to his job. He remembered the day he got promoted for his work ethics, and he always thought that his work could have been better if Mrs. Henderson didn't give him good vibes. The weather that evening was ominous from the start. The sky was a bruised purple, heavy with the threat of rain. The wind howled through the streets, rattling the windows and sending leaves swirling. Frank had a bad feeling all day, a sense of foreboding that he couldn't shake. He tried to dismiss it. He told himself it was just the weather, the long hours, the stress of the job. But the feeling persisted, a nagging sense of unease that clung to him like a shroud. He had argued with Martha that morning. A stupid argument, about money. They were always arguing about money. It was a constant source of tension in their marriage. He felt guilty about it. He knew he wasn't providing enough. He knew she deserved better. He tried to call her before his shift, to apologize. But she didn't answer. He left a message, telling her he loved her. He hoped she would listen to it. He started his route on time, but the traffic was heavy. The rain started to fall, slow and steady at first, then building into a torrential downpour. The wipers struggled to keep up. The visibility was poor. The passengers were quiet that night. Subdued. As if they too felt the oppressive weight of the storm. The teenagers were huddled in the back, whispering and giggling. The man in the suit was slumped in his seat, snoring loudly. The woman was sitting alone, staring out the window, her face pale and drawn. Frank was reliable. Middle-aged, thinning hair, a permanent crease between his eyebrows. He'd driven the 314 for 15 years. Seen it all, or so he thought. There weren't many passengers that night. A couple of teenagers heading home after a late movie, a man in a suit who looked like he'd lost an argument with a bottle of scotch, and the woman. Frank noticed her again at the Civic Center stop. The way she moved, almost hesitant, like she wasn't sure whether to get on the bus or not. He remembered her eyes. The way they seemed to absorb everything, to take in every detail. He felt a strange sense of pity for her. She looked lost, vulnerable. The city lights blurred in the rain-streaked windows. The rhythmic swoosh, swoosh, a monotonous soundtrack to the slow crawl through the city outskirts. The route was always the same. Stop after stop, a few people getting on, a few getting off. The usual ebb and flow of a city breathing. Frank knew every pothole, every flickering streetlight, every stray dog that haunted the corners of Elm Street. He could practically drive it in his sleep. He continued. Around 11:30, the bus was near empty, just the woman at the back and the drunk guy asleep in the front. The stop after the old textile mill was always a tricky one. It was on a sharp bend, the road narrow and poorly lit. Frank always slowed down, careful to make the turn. That's when he heard it. A thump. A solid, unsettling thump from the back of the bus. Like something heavy had fallen. He continued. Frank glanced in the rearview mirror. The woman was gone. Just, gone. The seat was empty. No sign of her. No coat, no bag, nothing. The bus doors hadn't opened. He would have heard them. He would have seen someone getting off in his mirrors. He pulled over immediately. His heart was already starting to pound in his chest. Something wasn't right. The rain was coming down harder now, blurring the world outside into an indistinct gray mess. He stood up, his knees creaking in protest, and walked to the back of the bus. He checked under the seats. Nothing. He looked in the luggage racks overhead. Empty. Hello. He called out, his voice sounding weak and reedy in the vastness of the empty bus. Silence. Only the rain drumming on the roof and the faint hum of the engine. He checked the emergency exit at the back. Locked. The windows. All closed. He started to feel a cold dread creeping into his bones. This wasn't possible. People don't just vanish. Especially not on a moving bus. He woke the drunk guy up. The man blinked at him, bleary-eyed and confused. Did you see anyone get off? Frank asked, his voice tight. The man just mumbled something incoherent and passed back out. Frank was alone. He called dispatch. His voice trembled as he explained what happened. The dispatcher, a bored woman named Brenda, probably thought he was drunk or crazy. A woman, disappeared, she repeated, her voice flat. On the bus? Are you sure she didn't just get off at a stop? I'm sure. Frank insisted, his voice rising. I didn't open the doors. She just, poof. Gone. Brenda sighed. All right, Frank. Just stay there. I'll send someone out to check it out. He waited. The minutes stretched into an eternity. Every creak of the bus, every gust of wind, made him jump. He kept replaying the last few minutes in his mind, trying to find some explanation, some logical reason for what had happened. But there was none. A police car finally arrived, its flashing lights cutting through the gloom. 2 officers got out, their faces grim. Frank told them the story again, his voice still shaking. They listened, their expressions skeptical. They searched the bus. Thoroughly. Under the seats, in the luggage racks, even in the engine compartment. Nothing. Maybe she's hiding, one of the officers said, his tone suggesting he didn't believe it himself. They searched the area around the bus, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The rain had washed away any potential footprints. After an hour, they gave up. Look, the first officer said, it's probably just a misunderstanding. Maybe she got off at a stop and you didn't see her. Maybe she's walking home in the rain. It happens. Frank knew they didn't believe him. They thought he was making it up, or that he was senile or something worse. But, she was just there, he protested, his voice desperate. I saw her. I saw her eyes. The officer just shrugged. "We'll file a report. If she turns up, we'll let you know." They left. Frank was alone again. He finished his route that night, but he was never the same. Every time he looked in the rearview mirror, he saw her empty seat. Every time he heard a thump, he jumped. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The next day, he went to the police station to file a formal report. He described the woman in detail: her brown coat, her dark hair, her wide, haunted eyes. The officers took his statement, but he could tell they weren't taking him seriously. They ran her description through their database of missing persons. Nothing. Days turned into weeks. There was no sign of the woman. No one reported her missing. It was like she had never existed. Frank started to obsess over it. He spent his days off driving the 314 route, searching for any clue, any sign of the woman. He talked to the shopkeepers along the route, asking if they had seen her. No one remembered her. He started to question his own sanity. Maybe he had imagined it. Maybe he was losing his mind. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible had happened. He started having nightmares. He dreamt of the woman, her eyes wide with terror, reaching out to him. He dreamt of the empty seat, of the thump, of the silence. He stopped sleeping. He stopped eating. He lost weight. His face became gaunt, his eyes hollow. His wife, Martha, worried about him. She tried to get him to talk about it, but he couldn't. He was afraid she would think he was crazy. He started drinking. Just a little at first, to calm his nerves. But it quickly escalated. He started drinking before his shift, during his shift, after his shift. He was trying to drown out the memories, to silence the voices in his head. He knew he was spiraling. He knew he was destroying his life. But he couldn't stop. He lost his job. The bus company fired him after he showed up to work drunk one too many times. Martha left him. She couldn't handle it anymore. He was alone. Utterly alone. He had lost everything. His job, his wife, his sanity. All because of a missing passenger. He decided to go back to the spot where the woman had disappeared. He needed to understand what had happened. He needed to find some kind of closure. It was a cold, rainy night, just like the night she vanished. He stood by the side of the road, staring at the spot where he had pulled over the bus. The rain lashed at his face. He closed his eyes and tried to remember everything. The thump, the empty seat, the silence. And then he saw it. A faint light in the distance. A flickering glow coming from the woods beside the road. He had never noticed it before. He started walking towards the light, his heart pounding in his chest. He stumbled through the trees, pushing aside branches and undergrowth. The light grew brighter as he got closer. He came to a clearing. And in the middle of the clearing, he saw it. An old, abandoned house. Dilapidated, overgrown with vines, its windows dark and empty. The light was coming from one of the windows on the second floor. He felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it. This was where she had gone. He cautiously approached the house. The front door was hanging open, creaking in the wind. He stepped inside. The air inside was cold and damp, heavy with the smell of mold and decay. The house was a ruin. Plaster was peeling from the walls, the floorboards were rotten, and cobwebs hung everywhere. He started climbing the stairs, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The stairs creaked ominously under his weight, threatening to collapse. He reached the second floor. He followed the light to a room at the end of the hallway. He hesitated for a moment, then pushed the door open. The room was small and bare. A single window looked out over the woods. In the corner, he saw a figure sitting on the floor. It was the woman from the bus. She was sitting with her back to him, her head bowed. She was wearing the same brown coat she had been wearing on the bus. "Hello," Frank said, his voice trembling. The woman didn't respond. He took a step closer. "Are you okay?" She slowly turned her head. Her eyes. They were even wider than he remembered. Filled with a terror so profound it made his blood run cold. But it wasn't her eyes that made him gasp. It was her face. It was covered in blood. And then he saw the room. It wasn't just bare. It was prepared. There were strange symbols painted on the walls, symbols he didn't recognize. There were candles burning on the floor, casting flickering shadows. And in the center of the room, there was a circle drawn in blood. He understood, finally. He understood what had happened. She hadn't vanished. She had been taken. Taken by someone. Or something that he wanted to run. He wanted to scream. But he was paralyzed with fear. The woman started to speak. Her voice was a raspy whisper, barely audible. "Help me," she said. "Please, help me." Frank took a step towards her, his hand outstretched. And then, he heard a sound behind him. A low growl. He turned around. Standing in the doorway was a figure. Tall and gaunt, its face hidden in shadow. But he could see its eyes. 2 points of burning red light. Frank didn't know what it was. Some kind of animal. Some kind of monster. He didn't care. He knew, instinctively, that it was evil. Pure, unadulterated evil. The figure lunged at him. Frank screamed. He tried to fight it off, but it was too strong. It grabbed him by the throat, its claws digging into his flesh. He felt his air being cut off. He gasped for breath, but he couldn't get any. He looked at the woman. She was watching him, her eyes filled with terror. But there was something else in her eyes. Something, knowing. As his vision started to fade, he understood. She hadn't been taken. She had been bait. She had lured him there. For the figure. He closed his eyes. He felt a sharp pain in his chest. And then, nothing. Frank never returned. Martha reported him missing, but the police didn't find anything. They searched the woods, but they didn't find the house. They didn't find any sign of Frank, or the woman. The case went cold. Years passed. The story of the missing bus passenger became a local legend. A cautionary tale told to scare children. But some people remembered. Some people knew that something terrible had happened on the 314 route that night. Something that couldn't be explained. And sometimes, on a cold, rainy night, people would see a faint light in the woods. A flickering glow coming from a place that wasn't on any map. A place where a bus driver and a missing passenger met their end, and the cruelest part. The 314 still runs. Every night. Stop after stop. The ebb and flow of a city breathing. And sometimes, just sometimes, someone sees a woman with wide, haunted eyes board the bus at the Civic Center stop. A woman who pays her fare with exact change and sits quietly in the back. Waiting. Waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to stumble into the darkness. Because the truth is, some things are better left missing. Some mysteries are best left unsolved. And some roads lead to places from which there is no return. And the 314, well, the 314 knows the way.